outside of Rainsville, Alabama, working with the Alabama Rural Electric Association. Groups here from several different co-ops around Alabama. We're in Rainsville. Meeting started yesterday, and then the wooded site is outside of Dutton, and beautiful little area. Some pines to thin out to create some storm situations, to let the guys practice on that, and hopefully if everything gets set up correctly, we'll have a on the line training class for Thursday and Friday with a small group. So it's going to be beautiful weather up here this week, about 70 degrees or so today, and not a cloud in the sky. So I guess tree work, people have been very successful. Just small notch, back cut. They can tell forward lean. They just kind of back up a step or two and watch it go. If there's a possibility of something being tight next to an object, or possibly a little back lean, automatically a rope goes into position, or possibly even a machine. But it seems like in training, very few actually understand the mechanics of the notch, and also how a hinge can work with that notch. So basically people just cut until something moves, and that's not always a good situation. If you're not watching down that face notch, you can end up taking the hinge off, whether cutting from the back or even with a bore cut through, and loss of control is pretty well imminent, unless you just happen to have forward lean in the direction that you want it to go. Very common, people, whether cutting from the back or bore cut through, end up putting their bar through and cutting the hinge. And a lot of people want to hold more over here on this side and allow the tree to pull around. Well, in this case, the side weight ended up on the bar and stuck. And also, if you think about it, very important that he was on the good side of this particular lean of the tree. A hinge that's set up properly with your plan breaks from the back to the front. Face notch closes, front line of the hinge still intact at that point. So very important to think through how that can work, and a face notch open enough to allow that hinge to work until the tree is to the ground. Finishing up day 3 today. The group here did really good on the felling. We got some interesting storm type situations set up here, and so it's going to be a beautiful day and hopefully a great class today. I'm looking forward to it big time. Got them set up into 4 groups, got them marked out, and they're going to be putting together plans in teams and then reducing those down. So whether on the line or whether we're working in the storm damage, we're going to take and think through the process of hazards and anything overhead or anything that might cause some danger to the operator. Then we start to look, can it go side to side? Does it possibly have side pressures or movement potential side to side, away or towards the operator? Next is looking at up and down pressure. So is it supported to where the top is going to be the compression side, or is it going to be the bottom is going to be the compression side? And then we can also move notches and hinges to be able to assist with that. And then we've got also back pressures, and whether it's on the line or it has a top against something here, we can end up thinking about back pressure that can stick our saw. So we have to make sure that we look for those things and then choose the right technique to be able to control that. Notch and hinge gives you the ability to control side to side as well as up and down. You have offset cuts that can give you the option of setting those and then backing up to be able to shake or take a piece of equipment and move those apart, or put a tag line in it to break it. So there's a lot of different things that we can do with that. When we work with storm damage, we want to think about 3 rules we've kind of adopted. First one is 1 person on the tree with a chainsaw until it's stabilized. Second is try to work from the butt end of the tree towards the top. And the third is don't pass any limbs as you go in that direction. That way it reduces pressures and binds, always gives you an escape, and very easy to be able to make sure that you're out of the way of any movement. And also co-workers. If you take, for instance, on this tree right here, I'm about 8 feet, I guess, from it. The limb structures are up here overhead. Maybe if you come down here, you can kind of see this is looking down the trunk. It's up against another tree. There's limbs that are bent over and spring types up in the other tree that could be pushing. These limbs are bowed back over to the left. So if I was to come up here and try to reduce some of this, I have a little sweet gum tree here that's blocking things, but more or less wherever I cut right here, I'm in a danger zone. In other words, it could roll over and be able to get to me. It could roll over very, very easily. It's above my head. A lot of times people say, well, I'm going to start down here where it's up off of the ground, and I've got these trees to block, so I start cutting in here. But you know, there's really no escape should something start to break or roll this direction. And especially if I come in from the other side, it would even start to be more evident that taking this from the crown end, you know, everything's got to be moved as I cut, and so it's really a lot more work to work with trying to clear this out. But if I come back here to the butt end, now that doesn't mean you're going to go all the way back to the stump on the tree. It's according to the situation. You know, even if it was a wind throw, I would reduce that first, take that out with a notch and hinge, and then basically start working up. And I use notches and hinges. And you know, a lot of people don't think about it. They say, well, we don't do a whole lot of tree felling, but we do a lot of cleanup after storms. Limbs of this diameter, that's felling a tree. And if you don't control it, it can fall, flip, come at you very quickly. Working from the butt end up, you have the ability to plan each one of those as a tree felling and basically reduce it, and then figure out how you're going to separate the trunk as you work your way up. If you take out all the limbs as you go, it lowers everything down to the ground as you go. You always have an escape back away from possible movement. And that's a key in the factor. So again, hazards, anything overhead, look to see side to side movement potential, take advantage of block trees where you can. Look to see when I cut right here, is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? Is this limb going to go side to side or up or down? All of those are taken into consideration as we will look at that. And then back pressure, where we've got limbs that are against something, or tops that could be pushing back. All of those are taken into consideration. And then we choose whether it be a notch and a hinge, an offset cut, a straight cut, a wedge to lift or to separate. All of that can be decided given our information plan put together. So that's the process of storm cleanup.
flat, and then there's going to be enough weight and pressure on this side where when I cut it, it should just lay down flat.
You stuck.
I'm stuck.
You want to be careful, you know, when you get the bar stuck like that, because if you pull the chain away from that bar, where does that pressure go? If I pull the chain up on the bar like this, where does the pressure go? Pulls the crankshaft and the sprocket tip. So you want to be very cautious of pulling the chain away, because it can really tighten stuff up. So if we look at that one right there, it goes out that way, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So where would the compression side be on that?
Well, it has a good little curve.
I'd say it's the side you're stuck on, isn't it?
This one.
So which side would you cut first? That's exactly what I talked about a minute ago. You went to the compression side, you started in, and then you went to the tension side, which was correct, and then you went back to the compression side, and what happened?
Yeah, it kind of fooled me there.
Yeah, so if you'd have stayed on the tension side, it would have came off. See, if you just use the tip, when you stick your whole bar across there, any movement grabs your bar and chain. If you use the bottom tip, then you can slide across it and that'll disconnect it. And as long as you're through the thickness of the hinge that you had on your uppercut, because see what happened is it started up, didn't it?
Yeah, it kicked this way.
Yeah, and so you just take the tip, start on the farther side, cut over, and that'll disconnect it. But I think it's disconnected. You see any fiber there holding?
Very little.
Yeah.
It's right here.
I think you're disconnected. Watch out. You go.
Yeah, there it goes.
Yeah.
There's just a touch. Got it.
Gray Johnson won a 362 C M-Tronic.
I couldn't be happier.